Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. David Fekete, co-editor of Our Daily Bread. When I was a grad student at Harvard Divinity School, I majored in religion and culture. I did that because my own Swedenborgian religion teaches that all religion comes down to the way you live. Secondly, I did it because I think religion takes its birth in the culture in which you find it. Religion forms the culture it's in, and it also grows up out of the culture it's in. That's why our first shot is in front of the Edmonton Art Gallery. I feel that art is a primary indicator of culture's values. However, religious art resonates at a more powerful level than does secular art. Let me show you what I mean about art in religious contexts by showing you some places of worship here in Edmonton. You're looking at the Swedenborgian church right now. That's my church. Let's go inside. Look around. You'll notice that there's not very much artwork in this church. Look at the altar. There's only the stained glass blue cross and the Bible, and that's about it. For Swedenborgians, it's the risen and glorified Christ power that gives us our ability to be better people. And the Bible is there because our religion is based on a spiritual reading of the Bible. For us, the Bible is like a long, continuous poem, and the images and people in it function like metaphors in a poem. We call this a spiritual sense to the Bible. But we're also based on 30 volumes of theology written by Emanuel Swedenborg. So this church has a deep belief system. This belief system was thought out in the 18th century, the period of the Enlightenment. So we have a lot of ideas. So it is very rational, very reasonable, but it is a system of spirituality. So it is as spiritual and mystical as it is reasonable. Not every Swedenborgian church is as spare and bare as this church is. Some of them have stained glass windows, some of them have fountains and things in them, but many of them are like this church here, which emphasizes the cross and the Bible as primary symbols for our religion. Growing up in this religion, I must confess, I feel a little deprived with its lack of imagery and statues and pictures and symbols. Let's take a short tour of some of the other places of worship here in Edmonton, temples, synagogues, and see the way other religions depict their faith and their beliefs in God or the Buddha. This is a Ukrainian Catholic church, and right away you can see the Greek influence in its architecture. The spires and the towers look like they're Eastern. Let's go inside and look at the sanctuary. Look around, gold everywhere. On the left wall are pictures of the women saints in the Catholic tradition. And on the right wall are all men saints. The women sit on the left side of the church and the men sit on the right side of the church. The sanctuary where we are is meant to bring heaven into your mind. It's as if when you enter the church, you're entering heaven with its gold and saints everywhere. Let's take a look at the altar. You'll see an image of Mary, and the image of Jesus is behind Mary. The Ukrainian Catholics believe that we come to Jesus through Mary. There's a theology behind all this. They believe, and I guess I do too, that Jesus came down to earth God in human flesh. So God can be depicted. You can make pictures of Jesus. So there's artwork all over in this church. We call this incarnational art. Incarnation means in the flesh, God in the flesh. Not every religion is as incarnational as are the Orthodox churches. Let's look at a couple examples of churches that do not have an incarnational theology. Now we're looking at a Jewish synagogue. Notice that it's rectangular and doesn't have a spire. That's because it's modeled probably after the temple that was built in Jerusalem. The rabbi's given us permission to go inside. Let's take a look at what the sanctuary in this synagogue looks like. Let's look at the altar. On the back wall, you'll notice 10 lines all written in Hebrew. 10 lines. Any idea what the 10 lines are? They're the 10 Commandments, and that tells us something right away about Judaism. Obeying God's laws is at the heart of Jewish religion, and the 10 Commandments are the essence of the law. Above the 10 Commandments, you'll see what looks like a fiery light. This is an image of the burning bush. God appeared to Moses in a fiery bush. That's probably the closest thing you're going to get to an image of God in Judaism, and it isn't meant to be an image of God. The second commandment forbids any image or likeness of God to be created by humans. So this is not an incarnational religion as you have in the case of the Greek Orthodox, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church that we just looked at. Also, notice the pictures around the altar. How many of them are there? 12. 12 is a number that comes up often in the Bible, and it means more than arithmetic. In this case, they're the 12 sons of Jacob. Sometimes the 12 tribes of Israel are depicted here, which are all sons of Jacob. Look at the stained glass windows on the sides of the altar. There's not the same number of stained glass windows on each wall. One wall has 4 and one has 3. 7. 7 is a number, another holy number that comes up often in the Bible. And these windows depict various stories from the Bible. Here's Moses with the 10 Commandments. There's also the sacrifice of Isaac. Over here is the temple. And they all represent feast days in the Jewish calendar. So even though you don't have an image of God, you have the laws on the wall that symbolize obedience to God's rules. And you have history of Israel with the 12 tribes of Jacob and the calendar festivals on each side of the sanctuary. We're now looking at a Buddhist temple. You probably guessed it by the Asian architecture of this building, the way the roof slants out. We're not going to go in here, and even if we did, you probably wouldn't see much. This school of Buddhism emphasizes meditation, so they emphasize the inner life and not so much the outer life. So you're not going to find a lot of artwork in this temple. I'm personally really taken by Buddhism. There are many different denominations of Buddhism, as they are for many religions, but they all follow the 4 noble truths of the Buddha. Much of Buddhism is detailed reasoning about how the whole world is changing and goes through cycles. To find enlightenment, which is what the Buddhist's idea of heaven would be like, we need to detach from this changing world and not cling to things that have no fixed identity. Everything is empty, and when we realize that, we reach nirvana, which is the closest thing the Buddhists have to heaven. Nirvana means blown out, as in a candle. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are volumes and volumes of detailed reasoning about how to reach enlightenment. But there are stages of devotion in Buddhism. You can generate good karma by worshiping the Buddha, and many Buddhists do that. Let's take a short visit to my apartment and I'll show you some of the Buddhas that typical practitioners would be devoted to. This black carved head is the Buddha. Notice how peaceful he looks. He's found enlightenment. Over here we have Padmasambhava, Tibetan Buddha, sometimes called the second Buddha. See how much more ornate he is than the Buddha himself? That's typical of Tibetan art. Look up. That's a mandala. It's circles inside of squares and squares inside of circles. It helps you to meditate. When you stare at the mandala and meditate, you enter into its figure even as you finally dissolve the whole mandala into emptiness. This is a very important Buddha here. Actually, it's a bodhisattva called Amitabha. This is the bodhisattva of kindness or compassion. The Dalai Lama is considered an incarnation of Amitabha. This is a spirit that scares away demons. Each religion has a history and a culture that gave it birth, as I said at the beginning. That's why I can be a Swedenborgian and still affirm other religions. There's a story from the Jain religion about 3 blind men and an elephant. The blind men encounter the elephant, and one of them is at the trunk, and he says, "Okay, this animal is like a hose." Another blind man is at the leg of the elephant, and he says, "No, it's rather like a tree." And another one is at the elephant's belly, and he says, "No, it's like a flat wall." All 3 of the blind men were correct. They just didn't have the whole picture. That's the way it is with religions, I think. God is infinite, and human beings are finite. No human being has it all. That's how I can be a Swedenborgian and still affirm other religions. I wouldn't try to make a Hindu into a Swedenborgian. Hinduism fits the culture of India much better than a religion from 18th century Sweden would. Nor would I try to convert a Jew into Christianity. God's laws are binding on humanity still, or at least most of them. That's how I understand religion and culture, and I hope this little tour of worship places in Edmonton has proved interesting, fun, and enlightening for you. Peace.